This is Larry Jordan, the host of the Digital Production Buzz. The following interview is an excerpt from a recent program. To hear the entire program, visit digitalproductionbuzz.com. Steve Martin is the creative force behind Ripple Training and has been using and teaching Final Cut Pro since 1999. He's a writer, producer, and filmmaker, and has consulted and or trained for Apple, Adobe, Disney, Canon, Sony Pictures, and other companies. But what makes him especially relevant for tonight is he co-founded The Buzz as DV Guys with Ron Margolis back in September of 2000. Hello, Steve. Welcome.
Hi, Larry. Hey, thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. By the way, I also need to say that joining us on set is Philip Hodgetts. Now, Philip masquerades as the CEO of Intelligent Assistance and Lumberjack System, but he's also involved with technology at virtually every area of digital production and post. And he also has run The Buzz for years and years and years after Steve and before me. So we're going to take a look back in time at the very beginnings of podcasting. Philip, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Steve, take us back to the early days of podcasting, way back to the year 2000. Back then, podcasting didn't even have a name, and there was only one other show on the web, which is Adam Curry's All Things Digital. Why did you and Ron decide to start the precursor of The Buzz called DV Guys?
Well, for one thing, we wanted to have a really cool sticker, that we So there's Ron and I. We have little caricatures of ourselves, and I still have stickers about this. But yeah, we wanted to do a show because, Final Cut Pro had just come out, and there was a lot of buzz about it, and a lot of people wanted to know information about it. So we really created the show to give people information about Final Cut. Phil can speak more to that, but lots of entrenched avid editors, people that had like investments and thousands of dollars worth of gear, want to know all about Final Cut. So really, that was kind of the reason why we brought it into being.
Well, why? Just help me explain, because now today doing a podcast is easy. You click like two buttons, and suddenly you're podcasting to billions. What was it like to create the very first podcast? What technology did you use, and did it work?
Well, let's since we're going back in history, and when we started the show, there was no such thing as podcasting. It didn't exist. Podcasting didn't exist really until about 2005, when Apple decided to integrate it into iTunes. It actually existed prior to that, but Apple pretty much squashed all of the other companies that were doing development on podcasting. The bottom line is 2005 is when it officially started. When we started the DV Guys show, you had to run OS X server, and you had to run this special software called QuickTime Streaming Server. Mm-hmm. It was a service on OS X. You had to work with this software called QuickTime Broadcaster. You had to set it up. You had to broadcast your stream to the server. Then the server had to spit out all of the streams, and then you had to send people a link. And maybe they got the feed, maybe they didn't. It was all audio. We're talking like the height of the T1, which is 1.5 megabits per second. Audio quality wasn't great, but it was really the first attempt at doing a radio show. You could do video, but it really wasn't practical given the fact that we didn't have, the technological infrastructure that we have today. Yeah, but it was all streaming. There was no podcasting.
Steve, why? Why did you go to all this pain?
But I used to get the stream because I listened to it all the time.
Is that Mike Horton? Hi, Mike Horton. Good to hear your voice.
Doesn't anybody ever tell you who's going to be on the show, Steve? Hi, Steve. Michael Horton here.
He did say that. Hi, Mike. Good to talk to you too, Philip. Even though you're disembodied and I don't see you.
I know. I'm just a body.
Yeah. So why the trouble, to answer your question? And I wrote it down. Here's why, Larry. It's really simple. Because it was cool.
Exactly.
It was cool. The fact we can broadcast over the internet a radio show. Are you kidding me? That was pretty neat.
So what was a typical show?
Well, I remember. I do.
Yeah, well, we had a cool, you know what, Larry? We had a really good theme song, and I couldn't find it anywhere, but we had a DV Guys theme song that we'd always roll in at the beginning. Philip, do you remember it? Do you remember the theme?
I'd still have it somewhere. But
No, at one of the appearances
sure.
that Ron and Steve made at early Lassie Pug meetings, because they made tons of appearances. I think on one of them they actually played the theme song, and I remember it, but I can't remember it. And I wish you could find it.
I wish I could too. I would have rolled it in here, but I just couldn't find it.
So tell me what a typical show was, because our show now runs an hour, and the show could be any length you wanted. I'm sure yours was really short, like 5 or 6 minutes.
It would run forever.
I wrote this down. One of the challenges of doing a radio show is, and I wrote it here, creating good content, finding good guests, interviewing. It's like the same thing that you have to go through every whatever month. How often do you do these now? Every week, every month?
Every week.
Every week.
Do you know how challenging it is to find, content? Well, same challenges back then. We had to find, we interviewed, Boris Yaminski from Boris. We, the product managers from Final Cut, the guy who's, wrote the software for a QuickTime streaming server, whatever we needed, we got them on.
But how long a show was it?
The show, Philip can remember, it seemed like it was about 30 minutes.
No, it
Steve,
wasn't.
It was like,
it was like 2 hours.
90 minutes or 2 hours. You were having so much fun, it seemed like 30 minutes.
Okay, you're right, Philip. It was like, you're right, it was about 2 hours.
You'd do a tutorial in there, a full-length tutorial.
You would have like a comedian call up every once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, remember that comedian guy who would call up and do like 40 minutes?
Yeah.
And you thought people wouldn't remember, Steve. I can hear it now.
I was trying to forget. You're right, it was a longer show. And we had a lot of challenges.
Philip, when did you take over the Buzz, and was it the Buzz when you took it over?
It was just shortly after I moved from Australia to the United States. Steve had already moved on to DV Creators, and Ron Margolis, who was actually my host at the time, I was literally staying in his house. He said, "Would you like to come on and co-host the Digital Production Buzz?" Now that there was a vacant co-host seat, and so I said, "Sure, why not? As long as I don't have to do those tutorials," because they were hard work.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Philip. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you too had a sticker made, didn't you?
Oh yes. Ron went back to the same artist and had the caricature done of me.
Oh.
The caricature is so young.
So who was it? You, Stephen, that started the show, or Ron that started the show?
Well, Ron, I worked for Ron, so I put the bug in his ear. I said we should do a radio show. That was at the height of Tupac, all this information about Final Cut. People were voracious about Final Cut information back in 1999, 2000. And so I said we should just we should figure out how to do a radio show. And he goes, yeah, we should. And it was literally that. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to set up a QuickTime OS 10. Back then it was called the Mac OS 10 server. Now it's just called OS 10, whatever. He set it up and he got it to work, and we got through the technological hurdles, and it was just my idea, and he just said, okay, that's great, let's do it. So a lot of times Ron would just kind of, run off by the seat of his pants. I want to do it, and I just do it, and that's what happened. He just did it.
It wasn't quite as simple as it is now. I mean, in order to put that QuickTime broadcaster in place, it had to be in a co-located facility. It wasn't just sitting in the back room. It was a dedicated box in a facility that cost quite a lot of money to put in place. I mean, thankfully, Ron had deep pockets.
But it's still hard. It's still hard to broadcast live and stream. It's still really hard. It shouldn't be as hard. It's a lot easier, but it's still hard.
At least it helped prove that intelligent media could handle streaming. So Ron was happy with that.
Can I hear a secret? Here's a secret. Do you remember Promax?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know they're still around, but the former guy that
Charlie
ran it, Charles
McConaughey.
McConaughey. Oh, I would say that a big part of doing this was like Charlie wasn't doing it, so we're going to do it.
So true.
Exactly.
So very true.
So, Mike, when did you join the show?
Me?
Yeah.
Philip and I were talking about that. I don't exactly remember the date, and I don't exactly remember why Philip asked me to do it. And he said because nobody else would do it or something like that.
Well, there was
and Steve Martin wouldn't do it, so it was like me or something.
Well, Steve had moved out of the city by that time too.
Yeah, Steve was like in Orange County. He hadn't moved to Arizona yet.
No, yeah, but it was not convenient to where we were.
Yeah, we were in Burbank.
And Ron had already moved to Hawaii by that time and was starting his fairly successful career as a real estate agent. So we were doing the buzz with laggy software. It was really challenging at that point in time. And at NAB 2005, we did a series of live shows from the show floor on the AJA booth, if I remember. And we just decided that was a natural time to wrap up that show. We took 1 week off, and then Greg and I started the Digital Production Buzz. And my original plan was to have a rotating co-host. You may not know this, Michael.
Well, that's what you said.
My original plan was to have 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 people so it wouldn't be too much of a burden on any one person. And so we got a little bit of diversity in the show. So, and you, at the end of the first show, you said, well, I'll see you next week. And I thought...
I did?
Yeah, and I said, oh, okay. And he just kept coming back.
We've had the same problem. Michael hasn't left this chair in a month. He just sits here and we wake him up for the show.
So really, I sort of like pushed myself into
no,
this.
not consciously. I never discussed with you the fact that I had this plan for rotating co-host.
You could have had Steve Martin.
Well, Steve had moved to Arizona by then, I think.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Steve, what was your most memorable memory of doing the show? Was it an interview or a demo or the terror of doing live? Or what is it that sticks in your head after these years?
The best thing that I remember is we still had to do a show every week or whenever we were going to do it. And I had my laptop. It was one of those black MacBook Pros. And I was going on vacation. It's like, well, we still got to do the show. So I brought my laptop with me to Carmel, which is up by near Monterey, Northern California. It's like, all right, I got to go do a show. So I had dinner. I popped a beer, and I literally, because it was noisy, I went into the closet.
Wow.
And I hooked up my thing, and we interviewed Boris Yaminsky from, Boris. And I was doing that from the closet at my vacation rental in Carmel. I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world.
That is the coolest thing ever. I've actually done interviews. I think we have done interviews where guys had their laptop in their car and doing it via 4G.
Oh, yes.
Philip, how about you? What's the memory that sticks in your head of doing the show?
Well, at this point, the one that comes to mind is Jerry Hoffman was out in the snow, and we tried to do the 1 hour beforehand pre-call, and no Jerry, no cell phone service, and he got just back into cell phone service just in time to do the show from his car on his cell phone on the way back down from the mountains where he'd been skiing all day.
I mean, that's kind of like, oh, wow, technology. That's like amazing.
The fact that we could drag into an NAB show in a suitcase, so we didn't run into any other issues. We could drag an entire production facility, a studio, audio.
Incredible.
But, microphones, mixers, headsets, the whole works.
It has changed.
It has changed a lot.
Steve, where can people go on the web to learn more about what you're up to?
Just www.rippletraining.com. It even sounds funny now to say www. Just say rippletraining.com.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where they can go.
And you can see Steve at NAB at the. You guys are going to be giving demos and presentations at that FCP Exchange place, right?
Yeah, I'm doing one on Monday and Mark's doing one on Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a little 30-minute session. They'll be there.
And Steve Martin is the CEO of Ripple Training. Steve, thanks for joining us. Philip, we want to have you hang around for the next segment, so we'll see you then. And we'll be right back after this.
See you in a couple weeks at NAB.
Rippletraining.com. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
If you'd like to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. To stay connected and receive updates from The Buzz, sign up for our free weekly newsletter now. Or you can learn more about us on our website. And thanks for watching The Digital Production Buzz.